A little girl walks her dogs every morning until people discover she is hiding an unbelievable secret. Before we get into the story, comment below where in the world you are watching from today. And if you like this story, don't forget to subscribe. Gray skies hung low over the town of Davenhill, a heavy shroud of sorrow cloaking the streets. Inside the red brick house at 42 Pine Hill Lane, Lily sat motionless by the window, her eyes quietly following the golden leaves drifting on the wind. 6 German shepherds lay scattered across the living room, each one like a silent sentinel, watching her, waiting for the slightest gesture. Her grandfather, Walter, entered the room softly, holding a steaming cup of tea, concern etched into his face. "She hasn't eaten anything since morning," he whispered to his wife, Nora, who was knitting quietly by the fireplace. "She misses them," Nora sighed, her hands trembling slightly. "But I think she senses something we don't." Ever since the tragic accident that claimed her parents' lives, Lily hadn't spoken a word. Doctors called it selective mutism, brought on by trauma. But what puzzled them most was how she communicated with the dogs. No voice, no loud commands. Just a glance, a soft whistle, a flick of her fingers. And all 6 dogs, from the massive Max to the nimble Luna, responded perfectly. One Monday morning, Davenhill was rocked by the news of a missing child. 7-year-old Caleb Johnson had vanished in broad daylight from the neighborhood playground, just 3 blocks from Lily's home. The eeriest part? There was no sound, no struggle, just one small shoe left behind beneath a gently swaying swing. The police launched an investigation, but leads dried up quickly. Whispers of fear rippled through the town. And then, exactly 1 week later, something strange happened. At precisely 3 a.m., Max let out a long, low howl. The other dogs sprang to their feet, growling softly as they stared at Lily's bedroom window. She stirred awake, alert but calm. Silently, she crept downstairs. The dogs surrounded her protectively, their formation instinctive. She opened the back door. Cold wind slapped her face, bringing with it a scent so familiar, it stopped the dogs in their tracks. Blood and machine oil. Max took the lead, nose to the ground, tracking with purpose. Lily followed without hesitation, her breath puffing white in the frosty night. Nora woke to find Lily's bed empty and the back door ajar. Panic rising, she roused Walter and called the police before grabbing her coat and running after her granddaughter. Across the frost-covered field, Lily stopped. She reached down and picked up a small red glove, embroidered with the initials, DJ. Max sniffed, then turned sharply left, heading toward the edge of the woods. Lily followed him without hesitation. They arrived at a burnt-out house hidden among the trees. Its roof had partially collapsed in a fire the year before. Max growled low. Rex licked Lily's hand as if urging caution, but Lily pressed on, flashlight in hand, stepping through the rotting doorway. Downstairs, a noise echoed from the basement, creaking, then silence. Lily gave a signal. Max and Duke went first. Luna and Shadow followed. Lily crept toward the basement stairs. The smell grew stronger, dampness and fear. At the bottom, behind the old furnace and broken crates, they found a small boy. Pale, shivering, his eyes locked onto Lily's. "Caleb." He stared at Max. "I've seen him in my dreams," he whispered. What happened next was blurred by adrenaline and emotion. By the time police arrived, they found Lily huddled with Caleb, surrounded by the dogs. In a dark corner of the basement, they uncovered a trapdoor leading to a hidden passage, perhaps used for abductions. Later, Caleb described how he had been lured away by a masked man, locked in the house, and left alone. But he spoke most about the dreams, how Max appeared to protect him in the darkness, whispering comfort only a child could understand. The media didn't know how to explain it. Psychologists were baffled. As for Mrs. Eleanor Patterson, the woman who once led efforts to remove Lily from her dogs, she showed up quietly the next morning and left a pot of flowers on the Thompson porch. That evening at dinner, Walter placed a piece of grilled fish on Lily's plate. To everyone's shock, Lily spoke, her first words in nearly a year. "The boy needed me." Nora's breath caught in her throat. Walter choked on his tea. Max gently lowered his head onto Lily's lap. She leaned down and whispered something only he could hear. In that quiet kitchen, something shifted. A tiny step forward from the darkness, guided by 6 loyal hearts who had never once left her side. The morning fog still hung low over the cobbled streets of Fairhaven as Lily and her 6 German shepherds emerged once again, like a quiet ritual threading through a half-sleeping town. No leashes, no shouted commands, just the smallest gestures from her tiny hands, and the dogs moved in sync, reading her like breath. The townsfolk had grown used to the sight, but familiarity did not bring comfort. At the corner cafe, Mrs. Mildred Price set her teacup down, narrowing her eyes behind thick glasses as she watched the little girl disappear around the bend. "I'm not saying the child is dangerous," she murmured to her companion, Mr. Clark Hammond, "but it's not normal. A 6-year-old with 6 large dogs. Something isn't right." Clark gave a slow nod, his gaze heavy with quiet thought. No one in Fairhaven had ever seen Lily laugh or speak since the night her parents were killed in a horrific crash on Route 5. A truck running a red light. Her world had seemingly frozen. She moved in with her grandparents, Walter and June, in an aging house on the forest's edge. And from that moment on, only the dogs had been able to reach her. In the mayor's office, concern was taking shape in more concrete terms. "I know people love Lily," Mayor Elaine Granger said, her tone gentle but firm. "But what if something goes wrong? A misinterpreted bark, a protective lunge. I'll be the one answering for it." Across the table, Officer Jesse Monroe, who had quietly followed Lily's morning walks for weeks, shook his head. "I've watched long enough. Those aren't pets. They're a unit, and that kid is their leader. I've never seen anything like it, not even in our canine units." But fear had begun to take root. Eyes in Fairhaven no longer looked at Lily with only awe or wonder. Now, they held something darker, worry, suspicion. As if the child was a figure from a forgotten legend they weren't ready to believe. Then one morning, the unthinkable nearly happened. A delivery truck lost its brakes and careened down Main Street, straight toward Lily and her dogs crossing the road. Screams erupted. But in a flash, Max, the lead dog, leapt into the truck's path, barking with authority. The driver swerved in panic, crashing into the town fountain instead. Nobody was hurt. Lily stood motionless in the street, eyes wide, voiceless. The 6 dogs encircled her, barking protectively. Townspeople rushed in. Some cried. Some took videos. The local paper hailed it as a miracle. But the miracle came with backlash. "If this were luck," Mildred Price told a town hall meeting the next day, "we shouldn't test it again. We need an investigation. For her safety, and ours." A week later, Walter Thompson received a letter from Child Protective Services. An official review was being launched. Not because Lily had done anything wrong, but to assess whether she was truly safe, and whether living with 6 large animals was appropriate. "We should be worried," Walter told June as they sat with the letter between them. "But if they try to take her away from those dogs, I don't think she'll survive it." A few days later, Dr. Olivia Fern, a trauma specialist, arrived in Fairhaven. She didn't come with checklists or harsh judgments. She simply sat on their porch, a few feet away from Lily, and observed. One afternoon, as Lily brushed Luna's fur, Dr. Fern spoke gently. "I lost my parents when I was your age, too. I didn't talk for 2 years." Lily looked up. No words, but her eyes paused a second longer. She gave Luna's ear a soft tug. A gesture that meant, safe. That evening, Dr. Fern asked a question that surprised Walter and June. "Has Lily ever written anything?" Walter nodded. "Only to the dogs. She leaves them notes, commands, training instructions, sometimes even feelings." "She has a language," Dr. Fern whispered, "and I want to learn it." The next morning, June handed Lily a clean notebook and a pen. "If you want to say something to Dr. Fern, maybe this will help." Lily stared at the blank page. A long pause, then she wrote, "They're not just dogs. They are my words." Dr. Fern read the note and blinked back tears. "Then if I want to understand you, Lily, would you teach me? For the first time since the accident." Lily nodded. Over the following days, something unexpected began to bloom. Lily taught Dr. Fern the subtle hand signals, tiny whistles, and glances that meant stop, wait, comfort, or danger. In return, Dr. Fern gently introduced Lily to spoken expressions of emotion. No pressure, just sharing. Lily started writing more. Luna's paw is sore today. I missed Mom when it rained. Max dreams and growls a little. A new world was opening. Silent but full of life. Still. Tension in Fairhaven had gone away. A local group filed a petition to limit the number of dogs per household. Others held signs reading, "Protect Lily, protect kindness." The town scheduled an open forum, an evening where citizens could speak their minds. Lily was invited to attend and even speak if she wished. The night before, she handed Walter a note. "What if I talk and they don't believe me?" He squeezed her hand. "Then at least they'll know you were brave, and you'll know it too." The forum was packed. When Lily's name was called, she stepped up to the podium, Max by her side. Silence. Then, she opened her notebook and in a voice small but steady, read, "My name is Lily. I haven't spoken with my mouth in 2 years, but I've always been talking. With hands, with eyes, with my heart. My dogs, Max, Luna, Duke, Rex, Bella, Shadow, they hear me. They are my words. They are my safety. They are my family. Please, don't make me go silent again." When Lily looked up, tears had fallen on nearly every face in the room. The story isn't over. But in Fairhaven, that night, silence was broken. Not with shouting, but with the quiet courage of a child, and the steady footsteps of 6 loyal hearts. After the town meeting, Fairhaven seemed to settle into a tentative peace. Lily's voice, soft yet powerful, had touched many hearts. Her bond with the dogs became something more than strange. It was something sacred. Still, not everyone was convinced. Margaret Holloway, a former school principal known for her strict discipline and firm sense of order, couldn't sit quietly. In her eyes, everything had to follow rules and structure. The idea of a 6-year-old girl living with 6 large German shepherds, unsupervised by capable adults, was simply unacceptable. She launched a campaign demanding local authorities intervene, arguing that Lily's grandparents were too old to care for both the child and what she considered to be dangerous animals. Margaret held weekly gatherings at her home, inviting like-minded neighbors. She circulated a petition to present to the Fairhaven Town Council, calling for a formal investigation. "We cannot let emotion override logic," she declared at one meeting. "The safety of the community, and of Lily herself, must come first." Word of her campaign spread quickly, and the town found itself once again divided. Some residents, sympathetic to Margaret's concerns, feared potential risks. Others, touched by Lily's quiet resilience and the dog's loyalty, believed that their bond posed no threat at all. The town council scheduled a special hearing. The meeting hall overflowed with residents, and tension filled the air. Margaret presented her case with meticulous detail, pointing out the age of Lily's grandparents and the size and strength of the dogs. When it was his turn to speak, Walter stood slowly. His voice, though weathered, carried a steady conviction. "We understand the concerns," he said, "but Lily and these dogs share something rare. We've done everything to ensure her safety and the safety of others." The meeting went late into the night. No decision was made, but the council formed an independent committee to investigate the matter fully. During this time, Lily's daily walks continued. She remained calm and composed, her face a quiet mystery as she led the pack through town. Though she could feel the unease, she didn't allow it to change her. The dogs sensed her moods, keeping close, forming an invisible wall between her and a world that too often misunderstood. One morning, something unexpected happened. As Lily and her dogs walked through the park, they came upon a young boy crying by a bench. He'd become separated from his mother. The boy couldn't explain where he lived, and the few adults nearby didn't know what to do. Lily approached gently. Her eyes met the boy's, and without a word, she gave a small signal to Max. The dog sniffed the boy's coat, then turned and trotted purposefully down the path. The rest of the pack followed, with Lily and the boy behind. Within minutes, they found the frantic mother, calling her son's name near the playground. She collapsed in tears as she hugged him. "Thank you," she sobbed to Lily. "Thank you. And your dogs? They're angels." The story quickly spread across town. Even those who had once doubted Lily began to see the truth. These dogs weren't a threat. They were protectors, guardians, They weren't just responding to Lily. They were working with her in harmony. But Margaret Holloway wasn't moved. She pressed on, determined. The investigation committee soon arrived at Lily's home for a full assessment. What they found surprised them. Despite their age, Walter and Ruth cared for Lily with incredible dedication. The home was clean, organized, and peaceful. The dogs were well fed, responsive to commands, and clearly loved. Lily herself, though silent, displayed a remarkable awareness of her surroundings and an intuitive connection with each dog. The committee took notes, photos, and even observed a walk through town. Everything they witnessed pointed to a household built on love and quiet strength. When the final report was released, the conclusion was clear. No intervention was necessary. The committee recommended that the family be offered optional support, counseling, check-ins, or financial aid, but that no mandatory changes be made. Lily was safe, loved, and thriving. Margaret was disappointed, even heartbroken, but for the first time in a long while she paused. One afternoon, she stood alone on her porch, watching Lily walk past her house. The dogs moved in perfect formation, the girl's hand barely visible in the folds of her coat. Margaret didn't see chaos or danger that day. She saw grace. She folded her petition and slid it into a drawer. From that point on, she stopped her campaign. Instead, she asked the council if she could volunteer on the town's eldercare committee, quietly offering to help other grandparents raising children. It was her own way of making peace. Life in Fairhaven returned to its usual rhythm. The whispers turned to nods of recognition. People began waving to Lily. Some shopkeepers even left out treats for the dogs and warm cocoa in cups with her name written on them. Each morning, Lily continued her walks, but now, the eyes watching her were no longer filled with suspicion. They were filled with quiet admiration. She had changed the town, not with speeches or protests, but with trust, patience, and a love so strong it didn't need words. Sometimes, healing comes from unexpected places. In Lily's case, it came in the form of 6 loyal hearts, walking in step with a silent girl who taught a whole town what it means to listen beyond sound, and to believe in the power of compassion. On a cloudy Monday morning, a silver sedan with Massachusetts plates quietly pulled up in front of the old wooden house, where Lily lived with her grandparents. Inside the car, Rachel Moran, a social worker from Child Protective Services, reviewed the thick file on the 6-year-old girl who hadn't spoken a word to anyone since her parents died, except, reportedly, to 6 German shepherds. With her was Dr. Alan Brewster, a child psychologist with decades of experience in trauma cases. He glanced over the latest medical report. Child exhibits clear emotional responses when near dogs. Without them, she appears entirely shut down. Lily's grandparents, Walter and Helen, greeted them with quiet, anxious eyes. The house had the hush of a place that once echoed with laughter, but now carried only the whisper of wind against wood, and the soft breathing of dogs lying around the little girl in the living room. Rachel sat across from Lily, who was sitting cross-legged on the floor, her blonde hair slightly tousled, her hand gently stroking the thick fur of Rex, the largest of the dogs. Lily didn't look at her, but her eyes did flick briefly toward Dr. Brewster, then back to Max, the dog on her left. "We're not here to upset Lily," Rachel said gently. "We just want to understand more, to make sure she's safe and happy." There was no response. Lily remained silent. But when Alan leaned forward and took a small wooden toy, a carved sheep, from his coat pocket, and placed it near her feet, Lily glanced at it. Max also gave it a sniff, checking it for safety. "This used to belong to my daughter when she was little," Alan said. "She kept it like a lucky charm." Lily didn't touch it, but her eyes slowly moved from Alan to Rachel, then to her grandmother Helen, who was sitting quietly behind her, gripping the hem of her sweater. Dr. Brewster scribbled a note. "Eye contact initiated. Mild curiosity, an emotionally symbolic object." The investigation didn't end in one visit. For the next week, Rachel and Alan returned, mostly in the mornings, time to witness Lily's now famous walk through downtown Fairhaven, with her 6 dogs in perfect formation. They followed at a respectful distance, recording every reaction, every gesture. And on the 3rd day, they witnessed something neither had expected. A young boy, about 4 years old, playing near the town square, tripped and fell. He burst into tears, blood running from a scraped knee. His mother sprinted toward him, panicked. But Lily was the first to respond. With one motion, wordless, almost imperceptible, she signaled two of her dogs. They fanned out to create space, allowing her to approach the boy. Without touching him, she placed a soft, worn plush rabbit from her backpack beside him. Then she simply waited. The mother, stunned, whispered a thank you through tears. The boy quieted, clutching the toy. Lily gave a small nod and returned to her dogs. Alan was frozen. "She doesn't just understand communication," he murmured. "She reads emotion and acts on it. This isn't just trauma. This is a transformation of how a child relates to the world." Rachel nodded slowly. "And the dogs, they respond to her like she's the sun." The incident was captured by a local onlooker and quickly went viral. Fairhaven became divided more than ever. Some hailed Lily as a living miracle, a beacon of silent recovery. Others, led by Margaret Holloway, feared what they didn't understand. Local officials were now under pressure. They invited a team from Tufts University's Animal Behavior Unit to evaluate the dogs over 48 hours. No one expected what happened next. On the second day of observation, one of the team members, Gregory Lunt, suffered a minor hypoglycemic episode while setting up equipment on the front porch. Before anyone could react, Shadow, one of the dogs, let out a low, urgent growl. Not threatening, but warning, and bolted toward Gregory. A split second later, a flower pot from the second-floor window ledge came loose and crashed exactly where Gregory had been standing. Everyone froze. Shadow returned to Lily, nuzzling her gently, as if reporting back. "That dog didn't just react," Rachel whispered. "He anticipated." Alan nodded, shaken. "And it's the child who taught him when to act." The Tufts team's report was unprecedented. No documented case exists of a 6-year-old commanding 6 trained German shepherds with such precision, autonomy, and shared instinct. These animals do not merely obey. They cooperate based on nonverbal cues and proactive behavior taught by the child. Still, policy was policy. A closed-door meeting was scheduled to discuss whether Lily should be removed from her grandparents' home and placed in a clinical setting for monitored recovery, away from the dog. The community, upon hearing whispers of this possibility, erupted with emotion. Lily remained silent, unaware of the battle forming around her. But that evening, something changed. She began to draw. The first picture, a car skidding in the rain, 2 adults in the front seat, a little girl in the back clinging to a dog. The second, a girl sitting on the grass, encircled by dogs. A house glowing warmly in the background. In the corner, small uneven handwriting read, "If they take me away, I'll lose my family again." Lily didn't know the first person to read those words the next morning would be Margaret Holloway, the very woman who had started the campaign to separate her from her dogs. And Margaret, once so certain in her crusade, would lie awake that night, questioning everything. The answer to what would come next would be revealed at the council hearing that might decide Lily's future. The pale morning sunlight filtered through the thick canopy of trees behind the house, casting soft, trembling shadows across the grassy yard. There in the middle of the clearing sat Lily, small, silent, and still, surrounded by a protective circle of 6 German shepherds. Bruno, the largest and calmest of them all, lay beside her, his head resting gently on her leg, eyes distant but ears always alert. From the porch, Henry watched with a steaming cup of tea trembling in his frail hands. Freshly returned from the hospital after a minor heart attack, he couldn't take his eyes off his granddaughter. There was relief in his gaze, but also the familiar weight of worry. "I don't know how I'll ever thank Bruno," he murmured, more to himself than anyone else. "If it hadn't been for him that morning." His voice trailed off, unwilling to finish the thought. Bruno had sensed the heart attack before it became severe. He'd barked, pawed, and whined until Eleanor called for help. Doctors later confirmed that Henry's life had been saved by mere minutes. But that wasn't the first time Bruno had stepped in as a quiet guardian. There was a story not many people knew, not even those investigating Lily's living situation. A story that unfolded one misty morning in early autumn, just 3 months earlier. Lily had left the house earlier than usual, slipping out while Henry was still asleep, and Eleanor was distracted on the phone. She'd wandered down the forest path behind their house, to a small forgotten pond. Her secret place to float paper boats. The air was thick with fog, and the pond was more dangerous than it looked. Trying to retrieve a drifting boat, Lily leaned too far and slipped into the cold, silty water. She was small, the mud was deep, and panic set in quickly. No one knew she was gone, but Bruno did. Somehow, instinct or something more drove him away from the other dogs and straight into the woods. Later, people would say he sensed something wrong. All anyone could confirm was that Bruno found Lily submerged, panicking, and pulled her out by the collar of her coat. He used his powerful frame to drag her ashore, then curled around her, warming her until Eleanor found them both, soaked, shivering but alive. Lily never spoke of it. She never had to. The way she looked at Bruno changed forever. While the official investigation by Child Protective Services and the town's safety board continued, the story of that rescue began to surface, not through Lily, but through an unexpected source, a security camera. Raymond, a quiet neighbor who lived on the edge of the woods, had installed a motion-triggered camera after a string of raccoon raids. Reviewing footage after a recent storm, he stumbled upon something he hadn't noticed before. Grainy video of a dog pulling a small soaked figure from the pond, then lying beside her. He brought the footage to town hall, placing a USB drive in the hands of the mayor's assistant with a gruff, "You might want to see this." Not to stir trouble, just to show who's really taking care of who. The video was played during a closed-door emergency session, attended by investigators, child psychologists, and legal representatives. In it, Bruno dashed off-screen, only to return dragging Lily out of the water moments later. The silence in the room afterward was thick enough to swallow sound. A therapist dabbed at his glasses and whispered, "That's not training. That's a bond. That's protection at the deepest level." Word spread, as it always does in small towns like Fairhaven. The footage, though not publicly released, quickly became the subject of whispered conversation and second-hand descriptions. Former skeptics fell quiet. A local bakery left out water bowls. A pet store offered discounts on dog treats. And a small bronze plaque appeared on the town square's community board. "Make way, Lily's silent guardians." Below it, a sketch of a little girl walking proudly with 6 shepherds. But not everyone was convinced. Margaret Holloway, the retired principal who first petitioned for CPS intervention, doubled down on her campaign. She made appearances at town meetings, speaking in firm, sharp tones about reasonable concerns and protecting a vulnerable child. "Dogs can't raise children," she declared. "It doesn't matter how many hearts they save. If something goes wrong, if even once, hold be accountable." But this time, her words felt hollow. One afternoon she walked into a council meeting with a folder of paperwork, expecting support. Instead, she was met with silence. On the screen behind the council members was the now famous footage of Bruno saving Lily. Margaret stood motionless as it played, then turned and walked out without a word. Back at home, Lily remained blissfully unaware of the political stirrings. But something had changed. One evening, after hearing her grandfather struggle to breathe, Lily silently rose before dawn. Without waking her grandmother, she signaled the dogs and left the house. She made her way to the nearby vet clinic, handing the startled receptionist a wrinkled note in crayon. "My grandpa was sick again last night. Please help, don't tell them I came." The vet, overwhelmed by the plea, arrived at their home within the hour. Henry was showing early signs of cardiac distress and was treated in time. This was the first time someone called Lily not just the dog whisperer, but a silent caretaker. When asked how she knew the signs of heart trouble, Lily simply pointed at Bruno, then touched her own chest. The story spread. The town of Fairhaven, once split, now leaned toward admiration and quiet awe. What else had they misjudged? Not only was Lily surviving, she was learning, adapting, and caring in ways most adults struggled to understand. And always at her side was Bruno. Loyal, watchful, more than a pet. The silence breaks, and a voice that shook a town. The ticking of the courtroom clock was barely audible as Lily took her seat again, her eyes shimmering with emotion. She had just spoken 3 small words, "Please, don't take them," but they had landed like a thunderclap in the hushed courtroom. Grandma Ellen gripped Lily's hand tightly, tears dripping onto her wrinkled knuckles. Beside them, Bruno, The largest of the 6 dogs and Lily's ever-watchful guardian, stood steady, his deep brown eyes fixed protectively on the child. Judge Barbara Wells, a woman known for her decades of unwavering service and strict adherence to the law, removed her glasses silently and dabbed at her eyes. She wasn't one for sentiment, but those few words from a child who hadn't spoken in 2 years held a weight that defied law books. "This child," she said slowly, her voice thick with emotion, "needs no further defense. Still, the law required due process." Judge Wells called for a 72-hour continuance to reassess everything. Lily's mental and physical health, the dog's behavior, and the overall family dynamic. As the courtroom emptied, Lily kept her arms around Bruno's neck as though afraid someone might still take him away. But this time, no one dared. Day 1. Behavioral assessment. The following morning, a behavioral evaluation team arrived at the grandparents' home. They brought cameras, standardized canine tests, and Kayla Rowe, a certified animal behaviorist. Kayla quickly noticed something extraordinary. The dogs didn't merely obey Lily, they watched her closely. They seemed to intuit her emotions and respond accordingly. When a volunteer pretended to fall during a test, Bruno was the first to react, but Lily raised a tiny finger, and all 6 dogs stopped instantly, forming a protective perimeter. "She doesn't just train them," Kayla scribbled in her notes. "She centers them, emotionally." Later, another camera caught a subtle moment. Henry, Lily's grandfather, sitting alone in the kitchen, rubbing his chest. Bruno, though playing with Lily in the next room, froze, ears up. He walked slowly to Henry and rested his head gently on the man's knee, letting out a soft whimper. Henry's blood pressure, when later measured, was dangerously high. Without intervention, the doctor said a heart attack could have occurred within hours. Day 2, a difficult interview. On the second day, Lily was taken to a therapeutic space downtown. Just her, Kayla, and a specially trained therapy dog. The hope was to assess her emotional well-being without the familiar presence of her pack. But Lily stood frozen at the threshold, her small fingers clenched into fists. Then, wordlessly, she turned and hugged Kayla tightly. "Do you want to go home?" Kayla asked gently. Lily didn't answer with words. She simply wrote on a sheet of paper, "Bruno understands me. No one else does." This wasn't defiance. It was truth. Day 3. Public sentiment shifts. On the 3rd day, something unexpected happened. Residents of Fairhaven gathered outside Town Hall holding handmade signs. "Let Lily stay with her dogs." Some were former skeptics. Even Mr. Walter, the grocery owner who'd signed the initial petition to remove the dogs, held up a sign that read, "I was wrong." Across the street stood Margaret Holloway, the retired school principal who'd started the case. In her trembling hands was a fax from the mental health facility treating her estranged son, David. David responds best to the video of Lily walking her dogs. "Please continue sharing it as therapeutic content." She lowered her head. She finally understood. Lily's bond with the dogs wasn't strange. It was what so many people longed for, to be understood without ever needing to speak. Court reconvenes after 72 hours. Court resumed. This time, Margaret didn't sit at the petitioner's table. She walked straight to Ellen and Henry and placed a hand gently on their shoulders. "I can't undo the harm I've caused," she whispered, "but I don't want to be the cause of more." Bruno took the witness stand, literally, after Judge Wells asked for a live demonstration. Before the full courtroom, Lily guided all 6 dogs with silent gestures through complex commands, forming shapes, even a heart around her chair. Then, Lily stepped forward, carrying a folded sheet of paper. She unfolded it and placed it before the judge. Title, "My Family." It was a crayon drawing of Lily standing among her 6 dogs, her grandparents on a porch swing behind her. Above them were 2 sons, a big one and a smaller one, with a label, "Mom and Dad watch me from up there." Lily looked up. "They are my voice," she whispered. The verdict. Judge Wells nodded slowly. This court recognizes that healing comes in many forms, and sometimes those forms walk on 4 legs. Her ruling was clear. Lily would remain with her grandparents and her 6 dogs. Bruno was officially recognized as a medical alert dog. A therapeutic program would be established to support Lily's recovery and safety. As the courtroom emptied, Lily ran into Bruno's arms and buried her face in his fur. Applause followed, not for victory, but for a quiet child who taught an entire town that sometimes the loudest truths are spoken in silence, with a look, a gesture, or the gentle touch of a dog's head. A light in the winter snow fell quietly outside the window, each flake gently coating the roof of the little wooden house, where Lily sat curled beneath a soft gray blanket. Bruno pressed protectively against her side. Grandpa Henry rested in his armchair, his breathing more stable after a recent heart checkup. In the kitchen, Grandma Ruth brewed tea, her hands trembling slightly as she recalled that morning, when Margaret Holloway stood at their doorstep, eyes red, hands shaking, and holding a confession in writing. The truth had been laid bare like a deep cut through the fragile peace of their home. Margaret, once the epitome of discipline and authority in Fairhaven, was now a woman weighed down by guilt and grief, trapped between the pain she had caused and the shame that followed. After her public confession at the hearing, Margaret didn't return to her stately home on the hill. She resigned from the town council, returned all the medals and certificates that had once lined her living room walls, and, within a week, moved into a small, worn cottage on the edge of town, a self-imposed exile, within sight of Lily and the dogs she had tried to take away, yet too ashamed to approach. Though the town was shocked by Margaret's admission, no one could deny the rare courage it took to speak that truth aloud. Still, for Lily, forgiveness wasn't easy. She was no longer mute, but every word she spoke now came carefully. Each syllable carried the weight of a past she had never chosen. A month later, on a crisp late winter afternoon, Margaret received a letter. There was no return address, just a simple message in neat but childlike handwriting. "You can't fix the past, but if you really want to help, meet me tomorrow morning at the Birch Park." It could only be from Lily. The next morning, Margaret left her cottage early, wrapped in a thick black wool coat. In one hand, she carried a scarf she had knitted years ago, meant for her own daughter, who never lived long enough to wear it. In the other, a paper bag containing an old photo of Lily and her parents, and a time-worn diary. When she arrived, Lily was already seated on the park bench, Bruno at her feet. Her blue coat was buttoned tight, her long hair brushing her shoulders, her eyes distant. Bruno lay calmly but watchfully by her side. Margaret approached slowly, and stopped a few paces away. "Did you ask me here to forgive me?" Margaret asked, voice rough from the cold and her emotions. Lily looked up, her deep brown eyes unreadable. She shook her head. "No. Forgiveness doesn't come that easy." Margaret nodded. She hadn't expected it would. She reached into the bag and pulled out the old photo. "I didn't come empty-handed." Lily took the bag. Her breath caught when she saw the picture. Her father's smile, her mother carrying her on her back, and a much younger Bruno curled up beside them on the beach. "I kept this since the funeral," Margaret said, her voice breaking, "because I thought I'd never get the chance to see you grow up." Lily didn't reply, but Bruno licked her hand gently. Then she pointed to the worn diary. "What's this?" "Your mother's journal," Margaret whispered. "I've had it for 10 years. I didn't have the courage to give it back. Until now." Lily opened it slowly, her mother's handwriting flooding her like returning memories. On the last page, her mother had written, "If anything happens to us, please protect our little girl. She is the heart of who we are." Lily clutched the journal tightly. She looked at Margaret, not as a bitter child, but with the eyes of someone who had learned that forgiveness wasn't something you gave easily, but something that could eventually be earned. The town of Fairhaven followed the story with bated breath. The town of Fairhaven followed the story with bated breath. Some were moved. Others remained skeptical. But no one could deny it had become something more than a scandal. It had become a test of compassion. Then another crisis struck. Bruno began to weaken. No appetite, sluggish movements, labored breathing. Lily panicked. Bruno, her protector since birth, had never shown signs of sickness before. The veterinarian was called. After a full examination, he gently delivered the news. A tumor near Bruno's heart. A risky operation was needed, and quickly. "I can't lose Bruno," Lily said, barely audible. "I'm not ready. He saved your life," the vet said kindly. "Now it's our turn to fight for his." The surgery was scheduled for Monday morning. That night, Lily stayed by Bruno's side, reading her mother's journal aloud, as if willing her memories into him. By dawn, a quiet crowd had gathered outside the vet clinic. Word had spread across Fairhaven. No one said much. They just stood in silence, hoping. Margaret came too. She stood off to the side, holding a bouquet of lavender, Lily's mother's favorite flower. The surgery took 3 hours. When the vet finally stepped outside, everyone held their breath. "He made it," he smiled. "Your boy is a fighter." Lily didn't speak. She simply fell into Bruno's fur, holding on like she would never let go. A week later, Lily walked through the center of Fairhaven once again, leading her 6 German shepherds with Bruno, brave, bandaged and proud, by her side. As she passed Margaret's little cottage, the older woman stood on her porch, hands clasped tightly. "Good morning, Miss Holloway," Lily said clearly, her voice steady. Margaret blinked in surprise, then gave a small nod. "Thank you for giving me a second chance." Lily didn't answer with words. She simply smiled. Sometimes that was enough. And from that day on, the cold winters in Fairhaven felt just a little bit warmer. Bruno's return. A town redeemed by a child's silent bond. A light drizzle misted over the streets as a quiet police vehicle pulled up in front of the grandparents' home. Inside the van, Bruno, the largest of Lily's German shepherds, sat calmly behind the cage, his deep eyes fixed on the familiar gate. Though well treated at the animal control center, nothing could replace the warmth of Lily's arms and the home they shared. Lily stood quietly by the window, her eyes swollen from crying, watching every movement of the van with bated breath. Since Bruno had been taken, she had slipped back into silence, as if a vital part of her had been taken with him. Grandpa Henry, still recovering from his latest heart scare, and Grandma Ruth had left no stone unturned, reaching out to lawyers, animal advocacy groups, and even local reporters to fight for Bruno's return. Margaret Holloway, once the loudest voice against Lily's bond with the dogs, had now submitted crucial footage from her own security camera. The video clearly showed Margaret slipping accidentally, while Bruno had reacted instinctively to shield Lily from a sudden bicycle rushing from behind. There was no aggression, just a loyal guardian doing what he was trained to do. Margaret, now humbled by guilt and clarity, made a public plea for Bruno's return. Still, the legal process took time. A safety review was underway, and Bruno's fate hung in the balance. But what happened next? Unexpected, raw, and transformative, forever changed how Fairhaven saw Lily and her dogs. A sudden signal that morning, Lily agreed, for the first time, to walk the dogs without Bruno. The rain had just stopped, leaving the pavement slick. Though the dogs moved with their usual discipline, something was missing. Like a symphony missing its lead instrument. Halfway through their route, Lily suddenly stopped, her head tilted slightly, her eyes widening as if hearing something others couldn't. The dogs tensed instantly, drawing in and around her protectively. Without warning, Lily unclipped Shadow, her most agile shepherd, and whispered something in his ear. Shadow barked once, sharply, then bolted northward toward the abandoned warehouse district. Back at the park, a concerned citizen called Ruth and Henry, reporting that Lily had sent one of the dogs off alone. As the family rushed to find her, Shadow returned. No longer alone, behind him trotted a small boy, around 4 years old, clothes torn, face muddy and pale. Behind them, police sirens wailed. The boy had been missing since the previous morning. His family had searched through the night, and only Shadow had been able to follow the faint scent of blood and fear into the collapsed section of an old storage building. Lily had somehow sensed it. No one could explain how. No one, except perhaps Lily herself. A hero returns that evening, without fanfare or further red tape. Bruno was returned. The mayor, the animal control board, the town council, all agreed. A dog who protected, who saved, who communicated in ways most humans couldn't even grasp, did not belong behind bars. When the car pulled up, Bruno didn't wait. He leapt out, landing with a thud and a joyous bark. Lily flew down the steps barefoot, her arms wrapping around his thick neck as tears streamed down her face. The townspeople lined the sidewalk, clapping. There was no longer skepticism that filled their eyes, but reverence. Margaret Holloway stood at the edge of the crowd, holding a bouquet of white daisies, flowers of remorse and peace. She placed them gently at Lily's gate before stepping back into the shadows, tears welling in her eyes. Fairhaven celebrates loyalty a month later. The town of Fairhaven hosted a new holiday, Day of Loyalty. Bruno received an honorary medal from the mayor. Lily stood beside him, dressed in a white dress her grandmother had sewn for her first birthday after the loss of her parents. This time, she wore it with quiet pride. Lily spoke more now, still soft-spoken, but each word carried weight. She was invited to local schools to teach children about dog safety and emotional connection. Advocacy groups sought Ruth and Henry for their story, their resilience, and their love. One afternoon, sitting quietly in the backyard, surrounded by her 6 dogs, Lily looked up at the sky and whispered, "I still miss Mommy and Daddy, but the dreams don't scare me anymore." Bruno leaned into her, nuzzling her hand. The others lay nearby like a silent circle of strength and memory. Fairhaven, once divided by fear, now stood united in understanding. Lily, the girl who whispered to dogs, was no longer seen as strange. She was a quiet miracle in a loud world. The echo of trust after Bruno was officially cleared and recognized as a medical service dog. The town of Fairhaven was no longer the same. The suspicious glances were replaced by nods of affection, and sometimes kind greetings when Lily walked past with her dogs. A town once divided by fear and judgment was slowly finding its heartbeat again, thanks to the compassion sparked by a 6-year-old girl. But just when happiness seemed within reach, a new shadow crept in from the corners no one expected. One early autumn morning, Henry awoke with a strange feeling. It wasn't another heart episode. Bruno always detected those early, but a quiet dread, like a ripple under calm water. Lily was still asleep, wrapped around Bruno like a warm fur pillow. The other dogs, Luna, Max, Shadow, Bella, and Duke, were scattered around the room, forming a silent watch. When Henry stepped onto the porch, he saw it. A yellow slip of paper, caught in the wind, fluttered to the top step. Scrawled across it in jagged handwriting, "Not everyone forgets. Don't think this is over." Henry froze. For a moment the memories of the crash came rushing back. The screech of tires, Sarah's scream, the final glance from his son. It cut through him like an icy wind. He slipped the note into his coat pocket and said nothing to Lily or Nora. But from that day forward, Henry began to watch more closely. Every unfamiliar car parked too long, every stranger's stare, every sound in the dead of night. It all tightened the knot in his chest. That Thursday afternoon, Lily took Bruno and Luna to the town library. She was speaking more now, especially with the other children in the therapy program she helped with. But today she kept glancing behind her, sensing something out of place. As she and the dogs prepared to leave, a loud noise rang out behind the library, like something heavy crashing. Bruno shot forward, Lily following close behind. She ran through a narrow alley, worry rising with every step. And then she saw him, a thin, bald man rifling through trash bins behind the building. When he spotted Lily, he froze. But what made Bruno growl wasn't the man's actions. It was the red tattoo on his wrist, a symbol eerily similar to one found in the files from the accident that killed Lily's parents. Bruno lunged. "Stop, Bruno!" Lily shouted. Instantly, the dog halted mid-step. The man ran, disappearing down a side path behind the town hall. That evening, Henry called Chief Monroe, a longtime friend from his military days. Within half an hour, officers were at the scene, gathering evidence. Security footage from the library confirmed what Lily saw. The man's face, the tattoo, all of it. "We had him once," Monroe said gravely. "Part of a trafficking ring targeting single-parent households. We didn't know he was still circling." The next morning, Lily didn't walk the dogs through town. Nora kept her home while local police quietly increased patrols, but Lily didn't like being caged. She scribbled in her notebook, "I'm not afraid. We protect each other." That quiet afternoon, with sunlight spilling through the kitchen windows, everything changed again. Barking erupted from the backyard. Henry and Nora rushed out. Shadow had cornered a man trying to climb the back fence. The stranger held a rusted knife, shaking. Before anyone could speak, Lily appeared, calm, composed, stepping between Shadow and the intruder. "Stop," she said, her voice steady. "You won't hurt anyone." The man hesitated. Something in Lily's eyes, free of anger or hate, stopped him cold. He looked afraid, Not of the dog, not of the knife, but of being seen through by a child who carried no malice, only understanding. Bruno emerged silently from the side, placing himself between Lily and the man. Within seconds, officers arrived and subdued the intruder. His name was Paul Riker, an old player in a trafficking ring, previously released for lack of evidence. Now, with the video and attempted break-in, there would be no release. At the press conference, Chief Monroe's voice cracked as he addressed the crowd. "We thought we were protecting her. But Lily and her dogs, they've been protecting all of us. The town organized a small ceremony that weekend. Nothing flashy, just a quiet recognition of an extraordinary girl and her devoted companions." A small bronze plaque was placed near the library reading, "Where courage speaks and empathy save." Lily stood beside it, holding Henry's hand, with Bruno at her feet. She didn't speak, just laid a white daisy at the base of the plaque, and whispered something into Bruno's ear. The dog nodded. No one else heard it. But Bruno understood. A new chapter. A northern wind spring arrived early that year in Fairhaven. Cherry blossoms bloomed in soft clusters along Main Street, casting a tender hue over a town once shaken by the story of a little girl named Lily and her extraordinary German shepherds. Though the media had long since turned away, something deep had shifted in the heart of the community. Now 7 years old, Lily attended school each day with Bruno faithfully by her side. Her small footsteps blended into the morning rush of students, but no one called her the strange girl anymore. With bright eyes and a gentle smile, Lily greeted her friends, and Bruno lay patiently beneath the schoolyard tree, ears perked like a watchful sentry. A special program called Whispers of Pause, developed by her teacher, Ms. Amelia, based on Lily's journey, had attracted many families. Children who once lived in silence like Lily now learned to express themselves through the presence of therapy dogs. Lily's story, born from grief, had become a firelight of healing for many. But on one chilly Monday morning, colder than usual, a strange wind swept down from the north. As Lily stepped off the porch with Grandpa Henry, Bruno suddenly tensed. A low, strange sound rose from his throat. Not a growl of aggression, but something deeper. A warning. "What is it, Bruno?" Henry asked, tightening his coat. Lily knelt beside the dog and placed her hand gently on his neck. Bruno's eyes were locked on the line of trees across the road. A dark blue truck rolled slowly past, stopping in front of the old Holloway storefront, long shuttered after Margaret's public reckoning. A man stepped out, tall, thin, his beanie pulled low, face obscured. Bruno let out another low rumble. Then the other 5 dogs in the backyard began barking. Sharp, urgent, coordinated. It had never happened before. Lily's stomach turned cold. She tugged on Henry's sleeve and made a subtle hand gesture. "Let's go back inside," he whispered. No questions. He understood. That day, Lily didn't go to school. She sat by the window, eyes fixed outside. The man never returned, but the unease lingered. At night, Bruno refused to sleep indoors. He stood guard on the porch, eyes open, unmoving. The next morning, a letter was slipped beneath the door. No one saw who delivered it. The handwriting was rough, shaky. "Be careful. He's back." No signature. When Mrs. Evelyn, the town librarian and an old friend of Lily's late parents, read the note, she turned pale. "Back?" she whispered. "It can't be. You don't think him?" "Him? Jeremiah Crawley," she said finally, voice low. "The one suspected of trafficking service dogs across state lines. The one police were investigating before your parents, before the crash. People said Margaret caused the accident, but there were whispers. License plate tampering, timing that didn't add up, but no evidence. It all got buried after Margaret confessed. That afternoon, something strange happened. While Henry went to the pharmacy, Bruno suddenly lunged through the gate, chasing a figure creeping behind the neighbor's yard. Lily ran after him. Bruno had pinned a man to the ground. The stranger wore black, face hidden. In his gloved hand was an electronic shock collar, a cruel device used in underground dog trades. When police arrived, Evelyn, who had witnessed the scene through her binoculars, confirmed what she saw. The man was arrested on the spot. His name, Jeremiah Crowley. At the station he only said one thing. "That girl, Her dogs, they're not normal. Fairhaven trembled again. But this time, there was no division, only unity. Lily was no longer that strange little girl. She was a town symbol of strength. A bronze plaque was installed at the town square. To Lily, the girl and her dogs who protected Fairhaven from the shadows. Bruno received a new patch for his vest. Guardian of Fairhaven. Lily stood at the ceremony, quiet as always. She didn't need to speak. Her eyes said everything. Amid applause and tears, she gently placed her hand on Bruno's head. No words were needed. Love, courage, and connection had once again risen above fear. Lily's story had grown beyond a child and her 6 dogs. It had become the story of a town healed by compassion. Lily's story and her loyal pack of dogs serve as a warm reminder of the enduring power of love, connection, and compassion. Lily, a 6-year-old girl who lost both parents in a tragic accident, did not respond with anger or self-destruction. Instead, she found her way back to life through a deep, wordless bond with her dogs. In a world where adults are often too busy to truly listen, Lily reminds us that healing begins not always with words, but with presence and understanding. Those of us who have lived through loss, regret, and the ups and downs of life, especially in our later years, can deeply relate to Lily's grandparents. No longer youthful, yet unwavering in their love, they stood by their granddaughter and protected the sacred connection between her and the animals. Love doesn't need to be perfect. It only needs to be steadfast. Their devotion reminds us that the quiet efforts of care and sacrifice are sometimes the most powerful acts of love we can offer. There's also a profound lesson in Margaret's journey. The woman who caused the accident that took Lily's parents. Though she once hid from her guilt, she ultimately chose to face the truth, apologize, and begin a journey of redemption. In today's society, where mistakes are often harshly judged in public forums, we sometimes forget that accountability, followed by sincere effort to make amends, is the only true path back to our conscience and our community. Forgiveness is not erasure. It is the creation of space for healing. Lily shows us that language is not the only form of communication that matters. In an age overflowing with words, news, social media, opinions, we've lost touch with silence, the kind that allows us to listen deeply, to ourselves and to those we love. For older generations, this is a reminder that the simple act of being present, watching, listening, gently guiding, can be a priceless gift to the younger ones around us. Most importantly, Lily teaches us that recovery doesn't mean returning to who we once were. It means moving forward, stronger, softer, and carrying within us the message that love and loyalty, whether from a dog or a silent child, can change an entire community if we're willing to pause and truly listen. I hope you enjoyed today's story. Subscribe to the channel so you don't miss more stories like this. Leave a like and comment below what you thought of the story. See you in the next video.